just to get it in under the wire before the statute of limitations ran out. It feels like, at least spiritually, the narrative is so on Jim Comey's side here that it's he has to keep pushing this because he's right.
And speaking of Lindsay Halligan, the legal publication Lawfare is reporting that the interim U.S. attorney started a 33-hour signal text exchange with one of their reporters discussing the recent indictment of New York Attorney General Letitia James. So in those messages, Halligan criticizes the reporter Anna Bauer's social media posts that summarize a New York Times report on grand jury testimony, calling them biased and not true. Bauer responded, wrote this in her piece. My exchange with Halligan was highly unusual in a number of respects. She initiated a conversation with me, a reporter she barely knew, to discuss an ongoing prosecution that she is personally handling. She mostly criticized my reporting, or more precisely, my summary of someone else's reporting. But several of her messages contained language that touch on grand jury matters, even as she insisted that she could not reveal such information, which is protected from disclosure by prosecutors under federal law. What's more, Halligan never stated the conversation was off the record until after Bauer contacted the DOJ for comment. A Justice Department spokesperson later confirmed the text messages and responded by defending Halligan. The indictment against James alleges that she misrepresented a Virginia property as a second home to secure a better mortgage rate. James has denied any wrongdoing. So, Mara, a couple things here. First of all, another example of the Trump administration being just entirely too online. I mean, responding to social media posts from a reporter that the interim U.S. attorney barely knew, potentially revealing things she couldn't that could lead to, that might not be well received by a judge or in court. But more than that, it just shows, again, this overarching campaign of retribution where they're going to defy whatever norms, frankly, maybe laws, in order to carry out President Trump's wishes.
Well, it's disturbing, but it also tells us something about the kind of process that is at work. So we've gotten a look behind the scenes at the prosecution that is clearly politically motivated, clearly a campaign of retribution. And what better to show that than a completely out of the ordinary and inappropriate kind of outreach, I would say, from Lindsay Halligan, who, by the way, is not a prosecutor by training at all. So there's a question of competence here. There's a question of due process.
Experience.
For State Attorney General Letitia James, absolutely, Mika. Experience. And it's also just embarrassing. You even just wonder if she even knew to say, if Lindsay Halligan even knew to say this is off the record.
Amateur hour.
I mean, amateur hour. I mean, that's something, by the way, that local officials, God, how embarrassing, know that they are on the record unless they say otherwise. So I'm glad that this came out, and honestly, it's probably good news for Tish James.
Joe.
Yeah, and Jim VandeHei, Mika said the word experience. Experience that, of course, so many people in the MAGA movement have absolute contempt for. If you've ever done anything that makes you qualified for a job, many will start grousing, deep state, because you actually know how to do your job, because you've actually been in these organizations and you know actually how to do your job competently for the president. Something I brought up after the peace agreement, or at least the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. You know, Jared Kushner's been there before. He was there for the Abraham Accords. He was there doing business for the 4 years that he was out of government. He knows everybody there. Something strange happens when you're experienced and you actually know the players and you know the game. You can do much better. Here's a perfect example, again, of a young woman who was just, pulled out of wherever Donald Trump pulled her out of. I think she was an insurance lawyer, maybe an insurance defense lawyer. And suddenly it's like, here, go prosecute this woman that nobody in your office is going to prosecute. You're setting somebody, first, you're setting somebody up for failure. Secondly, they fail because they do something that if they had had any experience in that position, they would have known to never do. This is the problem with appointing all of these people that are so woefully ill-equipped and ill-qualified. That's not a knock against her personally. That's just saying You can't go from never prosecuting a case to prosecuting one of the most important cases in America without having that experience.
Yeah, I think the bigger problem, right, is that the country is almost numb to nonsense. Like, what pulls the stories together this morning? You're talking about the destruction of the East Wing, and you asked rhetorically whether or not the president can do whatever he wants to the White House. And then we talk about the appointment of people in real positions of absolute power, using that power to go after individuals. And what you have happening is just this. The answer is yes. Actually, the president, if no one's checking and balancing him, he could just take down the White House. He can do whatever he wants. And theoretically, he can appoint whoever he wants into these roles, including people that a lot of people around them don't think they're up for the job, might find them to be incompetent, might find them to not have the requisite type of experience to be at the highest levels of government. And I think the danger for Trump, the danger for Republicans, it feels awesome in the moment, right? Like, you get to go back against your enemies, or you get to do whatever you want on your terms, and you get to dunk on the media or dunk on liberals. I think the danger is if the economy